Hi, welcome to Graphing Lines by Plotting Points. As we approach this lesson, I do want to make a confession up front that this is not the absolute easiest way to graph lines. But I do think that it's really important that we practice doing it so that we can remember that each individual point is a relationship. There's a specific relationship between an x and a y. And for every point that's on that line, you should be able to plug it into the equation and the equation will be true. You should be able to plug in one value and find the other, or plug in both and have the result be true. So the first question that we have to look at is x minus 2y equals 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug in a bunch of values and see where they come out. Now you have to be a little bit careful because there might be some times where you plug in values and it brings you off the chart. And if it brings you off the chart, that's okay. But if you are trying to get back on your chart, you might have to plug in more than just 1 or 2 or 3 values to figure out what you get. Luckily, sometimes I will give you specific values to plug in so that I can guide your reasoning just a little bit. If I've got x minus 2y equals 4, first thing I'm going to do is I want to make a t-chart. So I'm going to draw my lines so that I can separate my work. I'm going to put my x's over here and my y's over here. Now when trying to figure out which value to plug in, you can plug in any value for x and get out a y. You can plug in any value for y and get out an x. And that's going to be true for all lines. But you do want to make sure that you pick your values a little bit carefully because you don't want to end up with something that's a fraction so that you have to go over 2.5 and up 3 3/4. It's going to be a little bit of a pain. So the way that I'm going to suggest that you pick values that are going to get you to where you can have points that are a little bit prettier and easier to plot is to try to pick which one looks more complicated and plug into that one. You want to solve for the easy one. So I've got x minus 2y equals 4. Well, when I see that 2y, I know that that's going to be a little bit of a difficulty. So I'm going to plug in any point. I'm going to pick 0 just because I really like multiplying by 0. It's really easy. Anything times 0 is 0. So now I substitute. X minus 2, so instead of writing y, I write 0 equals 4. Well, that really becomes x minus 0 equals 4. And x minus 0 is just x, so therefore x equals 4. And now I have my first point, 4 and 0. Now remember, this is the set of points that makes it true. So I can go ahead and put it on my line. 4, 0 will be right there. The second point that I'm going to pick, I could pick 1 or 2 or 3. I'm going to pick 1 just to make life easy. So then I go 2 times 1 is 2, so I go x minus 2 equals 4. Keep in mind, I plugged in my y to figure out what it was. I add 2 to both sides, plus 2, and I end up with x equals 6. So now I have 6, 1. That's going to be a little bit off my chart. 6, 1. It's going to be over here somewhere. So once again, I'm going to pick a third point just so I can get something else on my chart. How about negative 1? Right? I know my line is going to look something like this, and so I want to pick something that's going to be coming back the other direction. So negative 2 times negative 1, so I got x plus 2 equals 4. Minus 2 from both sides, and I end up with x equals 2. So I end up with 2, negative 1. And there is my second point. In order to graph a line, you have to have a bare minimum of 2 points. It's always nice to have a third point because that'll let you know that you're right. If you graph 1 point and you get it here, and you graph 1 point, you get it here, and you get 1 point, you get it here, obviously those 3 points do not make up a line. So it is always nice to have a third point to check. So look at our second problem. I'm going to go through the same thought process. 4/5 y plus 1 equals x. So I'm going to say, here's my x's. And then I go 4/5 y plus 1 equals x. And then I'm going to come over here, I'm going to put my y's. Once again, look at which term is more complicated. Over here I've got just x, and over here I've got 4/5 y. That's definitely more complicated. So how could I pick values for y that are going to make my life a little bit easier? Well, I know that I'm going to end up dividing by 5. So it's going to make my life really easy if I pick values that can be divided by 5 and come out to be a whole number. So I'm going to pick 0, because 0 divided by 5 is 0. 0 is going to be a common trend for this lesson. 4/5 times 0 plus 1 equals x. 4/5 times 0 is 0, so 1 equals x. And that was an easy one. I go to 1, 0, and I put my first point. In order to find my second point, like I said, I'm going to pick something that's divisible by 5. How about 5? So then I go 4/5 times 5 plus 1 equals x. Well, 5 divided by 5 will go ahead and cancel itself out. So I go 4 plus 1 equals x. 4 plus 1 is 5 equals x. So now my second point is going to be 5, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There it is. I connect my line right there. If you wanted to check to make sure that it was right, you could find a third point, but I'm running out of paper, so I'm actually going to let you do that on your own. Our last two examples, or examples of places where you have kind of untraditional lines. You only have one variable. So I've got x equals 3 and y equals -3. Now, when I was in high school, when I was in middle school, and I first learned this, I memorized the rule because I didn't really know why that it was. I knew that if I had x equals, that for some reason it was going to be a vertical line, and it never really made sense. I've heard different acronyms and things like that, but the thing that I find with students is that if you learn it as an acronym or you learn it as a trick, not only is your understanding not as deep, it doesn't tend to stick. So here's how I want to teach this. I'm trying to graph the line x equals 3. So the first question I have is, where does x equal 3? To which everybody can tell me it's right here. I know this is my x-axis, I know that that's 3, so there's one of my points. Right, so that's a huge hint. If your line does not go through this point, it is wrong. Now I ask again, where else does x equal 3? People say, well, it's right there. Nope, that's where y equals 3. Oh, it's right there. Nope, that's where x equals -3. -3 and 3 are very, very different numbers. So usually I play this game where we go around for a little while thinking, and I'll try to get people to guess. But the point that I end up coming to is this is the point 3, 0. This is the point 3, 1. This is the point 3, 2. This is the point 3, 3. This is the point 3, 4. This is the point 3, 5. What do all of these points have in common? 3. And what is the 3 in all of these points? It is the x. So this is the line that every single point on it has an x value of 3. And so now you don't have to wonder why it magically ends up being a vertical line even though it's x. Go to where x equals 3 and then ask yourself the question, where else does x equal 3? Everywhere on this line x equals 3. On the other hand, if I have y equals, then I have y equals -3. So I go here and I put my point. Where else is y equal -3? Everywhere along here. Right? I don't really care that you put points here and here and here and here and here and here. It doesn't really matter to me, but you do have to make sure that you put at least 2 points so that you can show where it's going to be. So, as you start graphing lines by plotting points, make sure that you're careful to check your work and work slow. Don't try to go too fast and check your work. It's a whole lot easier to check your work and figure out that you made a mistake before you end up turning it in or before you end up submitting and find out later that you probably could have saved yourself some heartache if you'd done just a little bit more work. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.